Hi, I'm a 31-year-old female. I've been married to my college sweetheart for the last 5 years. We have a 3-year-old daughter. The past few days have been extremely difficult and painful for both my husband and me. My husband has a close friend from college whom he's very close with. This friend was even a part of our wedding. I used to consider him a friend as well because he was funny and charming. However, I had an experience with him that caused me a lot of pain and made me lose trust and dislike him completely. Basically, my husband and this friend were part of the same fraternity. One night, there was a party at their fraternity house. I got very drunk, so I went to my boyfriend's, who is now my husband, room early in the night to sleep. During the evening, the friend, who was also very intoxicated, entered the room and did some very upsetting things to me. It didn't escalate to a full-on rap, but he touched me under my pajamas and even got on top of me and started grinding. I was crying and telling him to stop, but he didn't seem to care that I was dating his best friend or that I clearly said no. The worst part was that during the incident, he said incredibly cruel things to me. For example, he called me an alcoholic and an intimacy worker. The following morning, I was sad and confused. At the time, I made countless excuses for him. I blamed myself, thinking I must have given him the wrong impression because we were good friends and spent a lot of time together. I also convinced myself that he was drunk and didn't know what he was doing, and that the incident wasn't that bad since he didn't fully rap me. I can't exactly explain why, but I didn't tell my husband or anyone else about what happened. I pretended like it never occurred and moved on with my life. I did protect myself by avoiding sleeping over at the fraternity house, which confused my husband, and not spending time alone with that friend anymore. My husband continued to be friends with this guy for years, so I would occasionally see him at events. My husband even had him as a groomsman in our wedding. I thought about telling my husband about my experience at that time, and I know I should have, but I couldn't bring myself to do it for some reason. Looking back now, it doesn't make any sense to me. I think I was ashamed and trying to protect my husband in my own way. Anyway, this friend is still unmarried and goes on many dates. A few days ago, my husband came home upset and told me that his best friend was being accused of date rap. My husband couldn't believe his friend would do such a thing and kept suggesting that it must be a misunderstanding or the girl wasn't telling the truth. I told my husband that I believed his friend was guilty, and when he asked why, I broke down in tears and revealed what happened years ago. Naturally, my husband was devastated. He reacted as best as he could given the circumstances. He kept hugging me and expressing his disbelief that someone could hurt me. He even wanted to immediately drive me to the police station to make a report, which we did the next day, and repeatedly mentioned how he wanted to harm the guy. Throughout the night, he held me and checked if I was okay. Finally, I felt relieved that I was no longer carrying such a huge secret. However, the next day, after thinking about it more, my husband asked why I hadn't told him earlier. He was upset that I allowed this friend to be part of our wedding and that I continued to see him over the years. My husband feels that I put myself in danger and is angry that he hung out with this person and let them be around his wife knowing he is a predator. I admitted that he was right and that I don't have a good explanation other than my own shame and guilt for keeping it a secret for so long. There were tears and raised voices, and I don't think he fully understands my perspective. He's trying to support me, but he's also upset that I didn't disclose the incident sooner and shaken by the possibility that something else could have happened to me because of it. We keep going in circles with this issue, and I don't know how to resolve it. Am I the one to blame? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your husband sounds amazing. He handled this exactly right every step of the way. Honestly, though, you should have told him earlier, prior to the wedding. I get that the trauma was too much, but given that this was his best friend, he needed to know to protect you better. He probably feels severe guilt for placing this friend in your path over the years, putting you at risk of harm. I was sexually attacked by my long-term boyfriend's cousin. They were best friends. For 6 months, I never said a word because I felt so ashamed. The guilt ate me alive. finally got the nerve to tell him. He didn't believe me. No one believed me. I broke up with my boyfriend, left my hometown, and started fresh elsewhere. Since then, the cousin has done it to multiple other people. Ex got in touch to apologize, but too little too late. So I see where you are coming from. However, he still needed to know. I would suggest couples therapy to get through this, heal, and rebuild any broken trust. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Please have more patience with your husband. A massive bombshell has dropped on him. He's lost his best friend and found out his wife has been in pain and suffering all these years without him being able to help. No idiots here. I won't call you a jerk, but neither is he. Comment 2. No idiots here. There is no guidebook for attack survivors. There is no step-by-step timeline that says, do this, then feel this, then say this. Attack of any kind is a confusing, horrifying, sad experience, and no one should ever have to go through it. You did the best you could in a time where Me Too hadn't been the big discussion, when a lot of victims were blamed, and there wasn't the discourse there is now about feeling safe to speak up. There is also no guidebook on how to feel or what to do when you find out your best friend abuses women. Your husband is right to be horrified. Your husband probably feels like he failed to protect you, and since his best friend isn't readily available to receive his anger, frustration, etc., it's unfortunately coming out at you. I'm sending you both all the love and hugs. Neither of you deserves this. If you can find a therapist who can help you both navigate these conversations, I think that would be an excellent idea. Now for the update. The day after the whole confrontation, my husband didn't come home until late. He literally spent hours at a bar with his college friends, avoiding discussing the incident completely. I felt the vibes when he finally strolled back home. It was super cold. Our daughter, who had been eagerly waiting for him, ran to give him a hug, but he barely even acknowledged her. Like, dude, she's 3. She doesn't get that you're having a midlife crisis right now. He just threw himself onto the couch, staring blankly at the TV like it held all the answers to life. I tried to start a conversation, but he brushed me off like I was some annoying fly buzzing around. Whatever, I thought. I decided to clean up the kitchen because at least that would make me feel somewhat productive. While I was at it, I found this hidden bottle of wine tucked away in the back of the pantry, like it was playing hide and seek with me. So I poured myself a glass, took a sip, and thought about the situation, feeling the weight of that secret I had shared. It felt like a huge weight just dropped on my chest. That weekend, we had a family birthday party for my mother, and I just knew it was going to be a mess. During the party, guess who showed up uninvited? Yep, the husband's college friend, the one who had been accused. I felt this rush of panic as soon as I spotted him mingling with the guests like he owned the place. My husband noticed my reaction and asked if I was okay. I had to force a smile, not wanting to ruin the celebration. I mean, this was for my mom, and she was super excited. Then the friend approached my husband, and they shared a laugh, completely oblivious to the tension around. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe and just not lose my crap in front of everyone. While I was in there, I overheard a conversation between my sister and a close family friend. They were talking about the friend's accusations and how it was stirring up gossip among our circle. Well, great. Just what I needed. I went back to the party, feeling the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. I overheard my husband defending his friend, claiming he wasn't capable of such actions. I felt this surge of anger rising up, and I decided I would confront my husband later. After the party, we went back home, and I confronted him in our bedroom. I brought up the friend's presence, like, how the heck could you let him come here? The husband insisted he was only trying to be supportive. He said he wasn't dismissing my experience. Our argument escalated, and he accused me of being unfair to someone he considered a brother. I was so frustrated, but I was also determined to get through to him. I decided I needed to take action, like I was on some mission from the universe. I started gathering information about the accusations against the friend. The next day, I spent hours researching and found this forum discussing the incident. I discovered that this guy had a history of troubling behavior at parties. Like, how the hell did my husband miss that? I felt empowered, so I put everything I found into this organized file. It was like I was preparing for battle. That Saturday, I invited my husband's college friends over for a gathering. During the evening, I casually mentioned the friends' accusations in my research. The vibe shifted instantly. My husband's friends began to discuss their own experiences with this guy. One friend even revealed that he had witnessed the friend's inappropriate behavior at a party years ago. I could see my husband's face drop as he absorbed all this information. It was like a light bulb went off, but like a really dim one. The conversations grew tense, and the friend's demeanor changed as he realized he was under scrutiny. My husband's face morphed into something I had never seen before. He finally confronted the friend about the accusations. The friend became all defensive, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Of course, my husband, now filled with doubt, started distancing himself from this guy. Like, I hope it wasn't just a temporary thing. The following week, I received a message from another acquaintance. This person provided even more details about the friend's past, confirming everything I had found. It felt like this giant puzzle was finally coming together. I just hope this path leads to something better. To answer a few questions, I did not inform my husband earlier because I was afraid and ashamed. I felt that I had no right to speak up since I didn't resist and didn't tell anyone at the time. I thought it was something I should have dealt with on my own. My husband has not mentioned divorce or separation, and I hope that he won't. I don't want my daughter to go through that. I want us to be a happy family again. Am I the idiot for leaving my dad and pregnant stepmom during lockdown and refusing to reconcile? Am I the idiot for leaving my dad's house after my pregnant stepmom threw out my cereal? Am I the idiot for leaving my dad's house through the window after my pregnant stepmom threw my cereal away? This happened in 2020, but it recently got brought up, so I thought I'd ask. So I, 17-year-old female, used to have a great relationship with my stepmother. I genuinely saw her as a mother figure in my life, and I was so excited when she found she was pregnant. But everything changed in 2020 when I had to stay prematurely with my dad during the lockdowns because my mom is a surgeon. At first, everything was normal until my stepmother Tammy was about 4 months pregnant. She started snapping at me for no reason, and things that she didn't care about before now bothered her. Now I wasn't a messy or a loud person. I did everything I was asked and respected the rules without any backtalk. But no matter what I did, she got angry. It came to a point she couldn't stand being in the same room as me. I remember I ended up staying in my room most of the time. I only left to do chores or get something from the kitchen. Even at that, she got mad. Like one day, she came into my room angry and started yelling that my room was so smelly it was making her sick. I pointed out that the only mess in the room was a half bag of chips, which caused her to burst out crying. As always, Dad babied her and made excuses saying she's struggling over lockdown, pregnancy, and not being able to see her family. My mental health was extremely bad. I felt like I was a piece of trash that any day my dad was going to throw away, and I was always scared my mom would get sick. It went so bad my hair started falling out. The breaking point came when I was at the kitchen table. I was reading a story on my phone, waiting for my cereal to go soggy to eat it. When Tammy came in, huffed, then started cleaning, loudly complaining about a mess. The kitchen was spotless. Then she took my bowl and threw it in the bin, literally even the bowl. So I just flipped and started yelling at her, asking what was her problem with me, and called her an hurtful freaking witch, among other things. My dad came running and got between us. She demanded that I leave the house, that I was never allowed near her kid. Dad walked me to my room, then said something that ruined our relationship forever. He told me that I must be doing something to Tammy because no one hates a kid for no reason, and if I kept stressing her, I'd have to move out. I then made a social media post asking someone for a place to stay, explained the situation in detail, packed a bag, then climbed out my bedroom window, bungalow. After about 30 minutes, my phone started blowing up, but I just turned it off and went to a friend's house. I texted my mom off my friend's phone to let her know everything. She didn't call for 7 hours because she was in surgery. She said my aunt would pick me up the next day. My mom told my father I was okay and that I'd be staying with my aunt for 2 weeks till she could come home. Apparently, Dad and Tammy had to go door to door to my family/friends' houses looking for me. After I made the post, let's say they got a lot of shoot. My grandparents still don't talk to him to this day. My aunt packed up my room because I refused to go back into that house. I've not spoken to my father in years or met my half-brother. Tammy and Dad still try to fix our relationship. Apparently, sometimes pregnant women get a hatred against people or pets for no reason. I'm turning 18 in 3 weeks, and a cousin's girlfriend asked me about inviting my dad. So I told her the story. She told me while what they did was wrong, what I did was a jerk thing too, because I made them worry, stress, and go to multiple people's houses during a pandemic that put a pregnant woman having a mental health issue at risk by whole stunt. So, am I the jerk for letting my dad think I was missing? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You were being abused by this woman to the point where you were losing hair, and your father chose her. You did the right thing to protect yourself. Even if this was a medical issue with her due to the pregnancy, the 2 adults in the situation owed you far more grace and understanding than you got. He told you it was on you because his wife couldn't possibly hate someone so much without a reason, while knowing damn well you weren't doing anything wrong. He can live with those consequences. If they can't apologize without blaming you, there is no real apology happening. Not the jerk. Comment 2. Funny how as soon as they were outed as jerks on social media, Stepbitch did a 180, immediately tamping down on her nonsense. Pregnancy hormones. My butt. She probably just hated the thought of another woman's kid competing with her real child that she's now carrying. Stay strong and don't let yourself be pressured, OP. You're not required to have a relationship with a parent who is willing to risk your life in support of his wife's neurosis. Now for the update. A couple of weeks passed since I moved in with my aunt, and honestly, things were going way better than I expected. Like, a lot. For real. At first, it felt so weird. I had to share a room with my cousin, and she's pretty much a total stranger, but the vibes were just so chill. I guess it helped that we had some things in common, like being nerds and loving the same shows. She even got me into this band I never heard of, and now I'm totally obsessed. Anyway, we vibed pretty well. The first few days, I just pretty much stayed in my room, playing games and trying to figure out what I was doing with my life. My dad tried to reach out through messages, but I left him on read, no cap. I just couldn't deal with his nonsense. I knew he was probably trying to convince me to come back home and deal with his pregnant wife, and I was not about that life. My birthday was coming up in a few weeks, and I was excited about it. I was going to be 18, so that's kind of a big deal, right? My aunt was planning a small gathering with family and friends, and I was just looking forward to the cake and presents. It kind of made me forget about the stress from the last few months. So on the day of the gathering, my grandparents arrived early to help set up, which was really sweet of them. My aunt baked a cake and decorated the living room with balloons. During the gathering, my cousin came up to me and said my dad had been trying to contact me. I just kind of ignored it, though. I was more focused on the festivities, and honestly, I didn't want to talk about my dad. The vibes were perfect, and I didn't want to ruin it. But of course, the drama had to come crashing in. Just as I was about to take a bite of my cake, my dad showed up at the door. He was carrying a bouquet of flowers and a card, looking all sad and stuff. My aunt let him in, thinking it was some kind of good gesture. I felt my heart racing as he walked up to me, holding out the flowers. Like, no thanks. I took a step back, refusing to accept the flowers. I wasn't about to fall for his guilt trip again. He started talking about how he missed me and how worried he was about my well-being. I could see my aunt in the background, looking all hopeful. Like, what was she thinking? He was the one who messed up, not me. The atmosphere shifted when he started talking about how much he missed me and how he wanted us to be a family again. I interrupted him, saying he cared more about Tammy's feelings than mine. Things got heated. He tried to defend Tammy, saying she was just stressed with the pregnancy and all. I told him that her behavior wasn't justified, not even a little. He accused me of being dramatic, Like, excuse me? I think I have the right to be dramatic when a grown woman is throwing my stuff out. I told him I didn't want to hear his excuses anymore. The gathering turned awkward, and everyone started noticing the argument. My cousin looked concerned, but I just needed to leave the table. A family friend suggested taking a break from the conversation, and I was all for it. I went to my room to just chill out. My cousin followed me in there, trying to offer support. She said she had to tell me something, and I could tell it was serious. She revealed that Tammy had been spreading rumors about me. Like what? I was shocked to hear that Tammy was telling people I ran away to manipulate them. That's such a twisted way to look at it. My cousin also mentioned that my dad had been talking to a therapist. She thought maybe it was helping him see things differently, but I wasn't convinced. Later that night, my dad knocked on my bedroom door, asking to talk again. He revealed that he and Tammy were considering moving away. Then came the twist. They were going to move to a different state. He invited me to come along, promising to work on our relationship. I just closed the door, leaving him standing outside. Like, no, I wasn't about to fall for that again. I was finally in a good place, and I wasn't about to mess it up. Edit. Shortly after the incident, my dad texted me asking for a chance to talk again, but I ignored him. I learned from my cousin that he and Tammy moved, but they still try to keep in touch with my grandparents. They don't approve of their move and still don't talk to them. Am I the idiot for telling my half-sister's son about our family despite her demands to stay silent? Am I the idiot for confirming our family tree and igniting my half-sister's fury? Am I the idiot for answering my nephew's questions about our family history despite my half-sister's demands to ignore him? I, 51-year-old female, have a younger half-sister, 35 years old, who was born from my dad's second marriage. My parents divorced when I was 12 years old, and afterwards my dad moved to another state. I visited for major holidays and 6 weeks during the summer. I was almost 16 when she was born, and I remember celebrating her baptism, her first Christmas, first birthday, etc. But by the time she was a teenager, I was in my 20s and living the city life all on my own, and my visits were rare. My dad had also gotten divorced from her mother when she was 12 years old. Coincidentally, the same age I was when my own parents got divorced. At that point, I only visited once or twice a year, if that. During one of those visits, my dad told me that my sister had been pregnant, and he'd sent her to South America to have the baby, and it was put up for adoption. He went on to say that by the time she realized she was pregnant, she had broken up with the father, who was 20 years old when she was 16 years old. I know. And she was left to figure everything out. She was adamant about not wanting the baby, but she didn't want to terminate the pregnancy either, so the adoption was arranged. She had a son. He was visibly emotional, but believed it was the best decision at that time. I was stunned. I hadn't really seen her much during her teenage years. My dad's divorce from her mother was acrimonious, so that, coupled with the age difference, didn't leave much room for bonding. Over the years, we've spoken very little. She's met my children a few times over the years, but they don't really know each other. A few weeks ago, I received a letter from an attorney. It laid out how I was identified as a relative of the person they were representing. I immediately remembered what my father had told me, and everything clicked. I was asked if I would be comfortable with answering a few questions regarding my dad's side of the family. Before responding, I got in touch with my sister. She made it clear that I should ignore the letter and act as if I had never received it. Her son is now 19 years old and actively trying to get in touch with her. She has zero desire to meet him. The conversation left me torn because he's already made progress in finding her. Not wanting to acknowledge the situation won't stop what's been set in motion. After this conversation, I sent the letter back, declining to answer on paper, but wrote a note on the form that I would prefer to be contacted by phone. The law firm got in touch with me shortly afterwards. I just acknowledged what they already knew, who our mutual father was, who our grandparents in South America were, etc. Basically, it was confirmation of the family tree. Nothing that was a big reveal. My sister called me this past weekend livid. She told me I had no right to butt into her past and I should have just respected her feelings. Now she is claiming that her husband of 8 years is finding out about this and it could ruin her marriage. Our dad has since passed away, and I can't imagine how terrible he would feel knowing that all of this is transpiring and how ugly things have become. Am I the jerk for answering the basic questions presented to me and not ignoring the entire situation as she requested? Now for an update. Since posting this, I got in touch with our eldest aunt in South America. I reached out to her at first contact from the attorney, but she was in the hospital. Unreachable. I was curious to get her take because she was the closest person to my dad. I kept things short because she's elderly and not in the best of health. Apparently, the adoption was legal, but with family members. He's known for a long time who his biological mother is. He tried to make contact when he turned 18, but my stepsister ignored him and has continued to do so. English isn't his first language. He wanted to find his biological dad, so he went the legal route to start his extended family search in the U.S., as well as seek out medical information from both sides. According to our aunt, he doesn't want to meet her. She says he's always been a good kid, and she misses him now that he's grown and on his own. I suspected most of what she said, but was glad I was able to get in touch with her. I'm still not sure if I was wrong for filling in blanks that were already suspected, or if my stepsister's response to all this is reason enough for me to have just ignored him too. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. 23andMe has basically eliminated closed adoptions. I can understand people wanting to know where they came from, but they don't realize the can of worms they may be opening for the other person. Affairs, rap, inbreeding. People need to be educated on what those tests may reveal and that some people aren't going to be happy you tracked them down. Comment 2. Not the idiot. While her giving the child up for adoption was absolutely the most reasonable and best option, she also relinquished any rights she or her family had over him and the situation. Quite frankly, this is something she should have been honest about with her husband well before 8 years into the marriage. Now for the update. A few days after I posted, my half-sister texted me asking if I had talked to my nephew again. She was demanding to know, like I had some kind of news to share. I figured the less I say, the better, so I told her I hadn't. I didn't want to make things worse. But then she calls me, sounding frantic and like a mess, saying we need to talk about this whole situation. We agreed to have a small dinner at our parents' house the weekend after. It was awkward because we were both avoiding talking about the nephew. Our dad tried to lighten the mood by talking about the weather. Yeah, that worked. Not. In the middle of our awkward silence, my half-sister suddenly blurted out that she had also received a message from the attorney. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe it. She had been in contact with the attorney, even though she said she wanted nothing to do with this. She started accusing me of ruining her life because I gave the attorney info. I tried to explain that I was just confirming some family details and nothing more. She wasn't hearing it. Our dad tried to step in and mediate, but he made it worse. She stormed out of the house, and it was just me and my dad left in silence. That night, I got a text from my half-sister saying she wanted nothing to do with me anymore. Ouch. A few days later, I got another call from the attorney, and he said my nephew wanted to meet in person. I knew I had to tell my half-sister about this, even though I was scared of her reaction. I thought maybe this would help us mend things. I texted her about it, and she responded saying I was betraying her even more and trying to sabotage her marriage. She really went there. That weekend, I went to a family birthday party for our aunt. Everyone was there. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My half-sister was avoiding eye contact with me and only spoke to our dad. I overheard her talking to our older brother about her nephew. He sounded confused about the whole situation. I felt this urgency to clear the air, so I confronted my half-sister outside the party. We had a quiet argument, and our aunt stepped in to diffuse the situation. She suggested a family meeting to discuss the nephew and everyone's feelings about the adoption. My half-sister reluctantly agreed, but it was clear she was still really unhappy with me. A few days later, the family meeting was set for the following Sunday at our parents' house. The night before the meeting, I got a text from my nephew asking if we could chat before the family meeting. I agreed because I thought it was important to hear what he had to say. We met at a coffee shop nearby. I was nervous but determined. He shared that he had been feeling lost and wanted to understand his background. I listened to him, and he told me he had been raised well but felt a void regarding family. After our conversation, I texted my half-sister about the meeting, hoping for a calmer response. She replied that she didn't want to hear about it and would skip the family meeting. At the family meeting, our dad shared stories about our childhood, trying to lighten the mood, but it was still awkward. The next day, I got a call from the attorney, revealing my nephew wanted to take legal steps to find his biological father. I knew that these next steps could complicate everything, especially with my half-sister still refusing to communicate. Edit: my half-sister's marriage is fine. She's been with her husband for 17 years without any major issues, and she's convinced that meeting her biological son will change everything. She has no idea who he is. She claims that our dad knows who he is, and I'm trying to ruin her life. I told her that wasn't true, and our dad's confused as well. I think her ex-husband's trying to contact her, but she isn't telling the whole truth. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.